Hey everybody, welcome back to the Alex Hayes podcast, and I am your host, Alex Hayes. Today I want to slow things down just a little bit. January gave us 3 very different episodes, very different conversations that I had, and different industries, different stages of business, different outcomes. But under all 3 stories, the same pattern showed up: owner dependency. And I want to start by clearing something up because this matters. Owner dependency is not a mistake. Let me say that again. Owner dependency is not a mistake, regardless of whatever famous Instagram artist or talking head you listen to. It is not failure, and it's not something to be embarrassed about. In fact, it's super normal, and it's how every business starts. In the beginning, just like Genesis 1:1, right? In the beginning, every business is owner dependent. You have limited capital, you have limited people, you have limited systems. The owner is the product. The owner is the sales team. And the owner is the decision maker. That is not poor planning. That is just reality, right? Early stage businesses move because the owner moves. They survive because the owner shows up. That phase is necessary, right? And Erik talked about this clearly in his episode. And he said, and he acknowledges that he knew his strength was in startups. His strengths were relationship building, product development, and go-to-market strategy execution, right? Those are founder skills that he's really good at, that he said consciously that I'm going to stay here in this arena, right? Now, they require the owner to be involved. Speed matters, decisions matter, presence matters. Owner dependency at this stage is not a problem, right? It is the engine. It's the engine for the business. It keeps everything moving forward, right? That is total startup mentality. Totally fine. Nothing wrong with it. Totally acceptable, right? And necessary. But businesses do not stay in startup phase, right? As a company grows and demands change, you start to have more people. You have more complexity. You have more risk. And what worked early on does not always work later. The same owner who drove growth eventually becomes the bottleneck. Now, this is where all those fancy Instagrammers and YouTubers all jump in, right? They jump to this phase, but they ignore the first half of what we just talked about. And it's not because and they become the bottleneck, not because they got worse, because the business got bigger, right? They had new sets of problems to deal with, and they had more resources. The business cycle shifts quietly. There was no announcement. There was no warning signs flashing neon red, right? There was no crisis at first. The business still produces. Revenue still comes in, right? From the outside, everything looks fine. Nothing to see here, right? But internally, the owner is carrying more than they realize. January showed 3 different points on that same curve. Now let's go back to Erik a little bit. With Erik, owner dependency is current and active. The business works because he works. Decisions run through him, right? Normal. Momentum runs through him. All of this is normal for startup phase businesses. Stability runs through him. Decisions run through him. Momentum runs through him. Stability runs through him. And that does not make the business bad. It makes it honest. This is what the business needs right now. It also means something important. If the owner steps away from the business feels it immediately, right? Not eventually, immediately. And that is not a judgment. It is a diagnostic, and it tells you where the business is in its cycle, right? It's life cycle. And he consciously made that decision to stay within the startup arena because he loves the game. He loves that startup game and he knows what he's good at, right? But now let's talk about Art and Sharon a little bit. The dependency for them showed up later. They built a large, successful firm over decades. And on the surface, everything worked. But when it came time to exit, reality showed up. Buyers could not replace them. Licensing lived with them. The expertise lived with them. Trust lived with them. Relationships lived with them. Noticing the pattern? So the exit could not be clean, right? It had to happen in pieces. Seller financing, consulting agreements, long transitions. That was not poor execution. That was owner dependency staying in place longer than the business cycle allowed, right? The business outgrew the phase, but the structure changed, right? And again, they adjusted their strategy to be able to maximize their outcome that they were looking for. And they pivoted intentionally and they were able to achieve what they wanted, right? Again, this is not saying that they did something wrong. This is saying that they incorporated a new strategy because of where they were when they wanted to sell. They had options. Their options were limited, right? They couldn't go to an outside buyer, so they had to redo things or look at things a little bit differently to come up with a creative solution. And they did, right? And they did because they were intentional about it. Now let's talk about Robert's episode, Robert Bortins, right? Robert's story shows the opposite. Owner dependency did not disappear by accident. It was designed out of intentionality, right? Leadership was transferred. Ownership was structured. Governance was put into place. The business was not built to rely on one person holding it all together. That did not happen quickly, and that did not happen casually. It happened because the risk was acknowledged early. The business moved from founder-led to systems-led before urgency forced the issue. And that is what this channel is all about. We do not want urgency to force your hand. Here is the pattern January made impossible to ignore. Every business starts owner dependent, right? Every business. Most businesses stay there too long. And the reason owners stay is not fear, right? This is what I got. The reason the owners stay owner dependent so long, for too long, is that it's not fear. It's actually competence, right? They're actually good at what they do. They know how to solve the problems. They know how to move things forward. Success rewards them for staying central, right? Over time, the business absorbs the owner instead of replacing them. That is the moment when dependency stops being a phase and becomes a risk, right? This risk does not announce itself. There's no collapse. There's no emergency, just pressure. Health changes, fatigue builds, family realities shift. Time removes options quietly. Most owners do not plan for the moment. They no longer want to carry everything themselves. They assume they will handle it later, right? And later rarely comes. And it's rarely clean. All three January conversations point back to the same question. If I step back at this stage of my business, does the business survive? And does my income continue? That is the question. The question is not about selling. It's not about a transaction. It is about sustainability. It is about whether the business serves the owner or depends on them permanently. Most owners do not answer that honestly until something forces them to. This podcast exists so that moment does not have to be forced. Owner dependency is not a mistake. Again, I'll say it again. Owner dependency is not a mistake. The risk is staying in it too long. January showed us what that looks like at different stages of the same business cycle, right? If this question has been sitting with you, there is a short, private clarity check link below, right below. It is simply a way to think this through for yourself. Now, we here at the Alex Hayes Podcast will keep building on this because we are here for you. Until next time.